And I think we all have the meeting notes that Tim prepared for us. And I think there's a little change in that the Woodbridge Land Trust and the Woodbridge Park Association are going to present next month instead of this month. And so, Paul, I think you had an idea of how we can use that time wisely today.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion, a point of order. I'd like to make a motion that we modify the agenda to table the Land Trust Parks Association proposal presentation to March instead of this meeting, and essentially be able to give the Parks Association and Land Trust time to give us their full proposal and give us the opportunity to ask questions and really understand what they're proposing and give them a fair hearing, similar to what we did for Arbor Haven. In that time slot, I would propose that we add a discussion of the Greenway and also on grant writing, a brief discussion on both. I think those are two ongoing subjects that we should spend some time on.
I second Paul's
All in
nomination.
favor?
Motion.
Aye. Aye. Barbara?
Aye.
Okay. All right. So that motion carries. So since the Parks Association and Woodbridge Land Trust was going to be first, why don't we start with a time thoughtful amount of time spending on those two things, and then we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. Is that okay with everyone?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So I know we haven't had a chance to think about the Greenway much. I did just send something over to Kate about the map that we had seen, I think at one of our very first meetings, probably before you were here, Paul, and as part of the commission. And it might be good to just look at that to refresh, or maybe let's have a discussion about what people are thinking, and then that map we have that map as a resource. So
Does everyone have also the description of the Greenway?
I don't have it handy.
I was not expecting this to be first on the agenda. So.
Oh, I can. I have it. I can scroll down to it. I think.
Do you want to screen share that? I can take the map off.
Okay. I think it's in the same document, so it might take me a minute to do this, but.
Well, while we're waiting for this part, was there any public comment this week, Sharon? Or for this meeting?
Not that I'm aware of, not that I have seen.
Okay, so we can check that one off the agenda.
Good. That was quick.
Barbara, is this the note you were referring to, Barbara?
That's the beginning of what, yes, but
okay. I have it up on the screen, so I can shift to different pages if you'd like. Tell me which page you'd like to start with.
I didn't.
This wasn't an agenda item.
Okay.
I had just felt that we need to get going on seeing what we need to work on to help create this the Greenway around the town. As everyone can see by this map, the only portions that are actually preserved are in the dark green. So that they are.
Well, I don't think the Fitzgerald property is actually preserved.
It's not.
They preserved in that they're protected, I should have said, rather than preserved. The Fitzgerald property is not really part of the Greenway in the sense that I was talking about the area that they wanted. People have tried slowly but surely to get property all around the edge of the town in order to connect with other town greenways and to have a circle around our town that is a greenway and public space. The light green is water company property. And then the even lighter green, and that's hard to determine on this one, but the lighter green is private recreation. So, and
Like a golf course.
right. And you can see the golf course right there circled.
Right. And then the next down just a little to the left of it is the Oak Lane.
Is Oak
Oak
Lane.
Lane
Yes,
and Homewood Acres.
right. So I simply felt that we should get going on trying to determine what we might try to work on for adding to this greenway. And of course, the first thing that comes up is the golf course that the town owns, and it seems to me there should be a portion of that since it is on the edge of the property, and that's what has been mandated, that at least that outer portion of that property should be put in the protected area of the greenway. And then there are several other pieces, and it might be that when we meet with the Park Association and the trust, that they have, I don't know how up to date this map is. There may be some other parts that they have already added. I'm not sure.
Well, Barbara, I totally think you're right in terms of the golf course, but it seems like there's other places we might be able to identify here too.
Oh, definitely. More than that, certainly.
I mean, I think one way to look at this is maybe we could look at kind of our wish list of what we would want to add to the greenway to be able to make it a contiguous area around town. And, not that the country club is the only place, but that would be maybe one place we'd want to look at as a potential in terms of if that became part of the greenway, which just because it's on the edge of town, it does seem to make sense to have at least, some portion of it be part of the greenway system. It would connect down to Oak Lane and Homewood Acres and also the water company property.
Yeah.
Yale Golf Course, absolutely. Yale Golf Course, and also the Racebrook track too. So.
Oh, right. That would be great to connect with that. Whoever is doing the map, can you bring the map down a little bit so we can see the top of it, or at least I can't see the top of it? Because
sure.
I'm wondering if we can sort of focus on some of the properties up at the very top too, because it looks like they could almost connect.
Yeah, they're smaller properties that seem to be adjacent to larger pieces. So.
Maybe I don't know if this is helpful, but maybe we could, I don't know if anyone could put a dot or put anything in, and some of us could investigate some of the periphery properties that, some of them are obviously homes, but there are some kind of shapes that don't look like regular lots that might be acquirable land. So I don't know how we'd identify them right now. But
my fear about doing that without knowing if they're property, that we might end up scaring a homeowner very badly if they watch this back tomorrow. We've selected their land for.
No. We're just trying to figure out where opportunities are. We're not taking anyone's land. But
no, I know, but we don't know, Yeah.
Right. Well, okay. So what might be the best way to do it? Maybe do some just checking and seeing what pieces are uninhabited and just raw land. That
I think we could probably if we look through the map and went all the way around, you could kind of just visually see, where the gaps are, and maybe we could start to look at if we were to start to connect the larger green squares, how might we do that? To make it a continuous path around town.
Right.
And it might not be exactly along the edge of the town either. The advantage of that, of course, is is connecting with other towns' greenways. And the right side, as we're looking at it, of course, is West Rock. So that's got a lot already done.
Yeah.
But for instance, I don't know what that kind of to the right of the middle at the top, there's a large white section that seems not to have anything.
This area here, I don't know if you can
Well-
see my cursor.
Well, yeah, I can see the cursor a little bit further
I
to the
have
right,
another cursor on this piece here that I was thinking that you might be thinking of.
a little bit to the right. No, the other way.
Oh,
Sorry,
to the right, okay.
right there.
Oh,
Just
this
have-
area here where it's white?
No. To the left now, right there. That big white piece right there.
Go up an inch, Paul.
Right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Okay,
I have no idea what that is. So what possibly
it
we
looks
should
like
do-
it's right on Amity Road, right? Is that Amity Road, you
No,
think?
no, that's way in the north. This is up by Bethany.
No, Amity Road all the way up? Is that what that is?
right near Amity, yes. Amity, I believe, is the one that, yes, I know where it turns off there and down a little bit is Seymour Road. So that is Amity Road that's kind of curving up there.
Mhm. And
Um,
the top of that is Bethany,
right.
right?
But it seems to me that maybe each of us could take and just see who owns or what some of these things are that we might be able to somehow get some interest in.
Yeah, Barbara, if Paul, if you go down a little bit, there's a piece of land that's already been identified, that's been talked about. That's, I don't know the history of, Jason knows it, but it's right below the third lake, between the third and fourth lake. I think that's a piece that has been down.
Oh,
Yeah.
further down, okay.
Where that white part is?
Yeah,
there
that white
between-
part.
Where between the third and fourth lake?
I don't know
Yeah,
if you can see my cursor, but that's actually something that we could look at again.
that right in there, yeah.
Yeah. And I think
But
this,
as I say, I know well, not so much the Park Association, but the Land Trust has been trying to identify some of these things also. And possibly even the West Rock Conservancy or whatever they call themselves. West River, I should say. They may have gotten some identification of some places too. So once again, it's kind of coordinating with other organizations to see what they're doing and or have done and what we can do to help to add to it.
that all sounds good. Is there any specific action you'd like us to maybe work on for the next month or two, Barbara, that you could propose that we could maybe see if we can, start a process?
As I say, if each individual commission member were to take an area and just look into it as far as ownership or what the other organizations have in mind or have done or whatever, it seems to me it would be helpful. Or maybe we should just take one side of the town and work on that.
I would suggest we check with the land trust to make sure that we're starting with the most current map too. There might be some work that's,
Mhm.
just by the look of this map, this could be 30 or 40 years old maybe. So maybe we should check with them to see what the most current map is so that, we're not spending time on property that might already be protected or part of.
Well, should we then take advantage of their coming next month and ask them also to report on this and have a discussion about how we can be of help and work on it together and so forth?
I think we could ask them, but I think we're not gonna, I think their presentation's probably gonna take a while and we're probably gonna have questions on it. So, I mean, I think we could ask them and maybe we could do it at a subsequent meeting, or even go to their meeting and do it but I'm not sure how much time we're gonna have if we have their proposal. I'm not sure what the proposal is going to look like. So
Yeah, we can at least ask them maybe and see if they can then prepare that. I think they're pretty busy with this, and to ask them something else right now might be a lot. But, and I don't know that they have a more up-to-date map, but I can check into that a little bit.
I was going to say, at least, even if they do have a more up-to-date map, it will begin the process.
And I liked your idea, Barbara, personally, of taking one area. I think taking all the areas, I mean,
Oh, that's overwhelming, yes.
yeah, I think if we just choose like the north or the east or the south, you know, that might be the.
Let me just jump in here. The town clerk, Stephanie Chiraleglio, has a very good overview of all of these properties. And she might be a very good person to contact, save you a lot of time.
okay.
Yeah,
right.
that would make sense that she'd have that.
But she also has a vast knowledge of the history of all of these properties. So she's really a wealth of information.
Yeah, she might even be a person to have come at least at some meeting and talk about some of that.
I think it might be helpful if we just, even at some point when we get a current map, to be able to take a marker and just kind of run around the map with a marker and say, ideally this would be the loop that we would try to form around town just by looking at the map as a starting point. And then at that point, start to prioritize the places that we think we might want to investigate, starting with. So for instance, what Barbara said, she made the comment about the country club property. If that property is developed at some point, it would be good for us to identify what would make sense, what would make the most sense for the greenway portion of it, so that that's identified also.
Well, I'd be happy to talk to Stephanie and see what she has to say up front about it. And then you're right, maybe she could come after we get a little bit more knowledge from her, from the trust, from various organizations, and we can proceed further.
And I would hope that if we are in person, it might be even easier to all huddle around a map and sort of look at it together and make some, initial ideas of where ideally we'd have more protected land.
Do you think our next meeting is going to be in person? Is there any talk about starting to do that again?
I personally don't know.
Dave, do you have any thoughts? David?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Well, there will be a small meeting to be held in person of the one of the subcommittees. And there's also, there'd also be a discussion this month about the mask mandate at school. So, I mean, it is a possibility that the meetings may be in person. It's not entirely ruled out, but it'll have to go according to, the positivity rate, the case numbers in town. So that's kind of a moving target, but I suppose it's possible.
Okay, so should we, it sounds like, Barbara, you're willing to talk to Stephanie, and I'm willing to talk to, get a little feeling from the land trust if they have a more up-to-date map. But I think David might be right that Stephanie might be a better source. And then maybe when we are in person, we can propose the idea of sitting down with a map and kind of looking at different places. And there is a map that shows the ownership of every piece of land that Stephanie has too. And that might be helpful too, because somebody might say, oh yeah, they have a big house and that they're obviously not really open land, and oh no, that's a field. And and we can have more data if we're focusing in on different specific spots. Does that seem like a reasonable next step to people?
Sounds
Yes.
good to me.
Yes.
Sounds good. And I also will volunteer myself.
Wait, Valerie, you just muted yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm also would like to volunteer to work with Barbara if she would like the assistance.
Sure, absolutely.
That'd
Okay.
be great.
Great.
Okay. So the action is Barbara and Valerie will talk to Stephanie and sort of figure out how to get the most up-to-date map and maybe names and a little more. And I'll talk to the land trust and we'll maybe have a short agenda item just as an update next time, but maybe not really deal with it if there's too much else going on till the meeting or after that. Does that seem okay to people?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay, so are we ready to move on to, should we move on to grants, or do you want to do minutes and do grants towards the end? What's the,
I got into this discussion and forgot to take minutes.
Why don't we talk about grants? I think that'll be a short subject.
okay,
So I know others had thought too that being able to write grants is going to be an important skill for us going forward, and being able to do it. And I know some of us have some experience in it and others don't. I don't have any experience, but I think Kate's done some things. And you know,
and can I just interject? Tim specifically wanted me to acknowledge your grant writing and the success you've had, Kate, with the bicycle grant. And he just wanted to make sure that we all knew about that and appreciated your great effort.
It was me and Charlotte Sapo. So
Oh, great.
um,
Thank
I
you.
would, I have a comment about the grant thing. My fear is that we hear about grant opportunities and then we try and run to do that. And so I would love if we had a subcommittee that worked on a grant specific, so like worked on a grant with the future in mind. And so like if we picked a certain parcel in town that we know that we want, like the one that Sharon had mentioned, Jason, that would connect kind of the
Yeah.
West Rock Ridge. If we started the pre-work on a parcel, so that way when grant opportunities come up, we've already gotten at least some of that done. Because a lot of times there isn't a tremendous amount of lead time. And I think with meeting once a month, and I think if we're serious about property acquisition, then we need to be a little more organized.
So that fits just into exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking that for those of us who know about grants, we might have a short session sometime just to tell other people kind of the anatomy of a grant, like what goes into it. Because without, I don't, and then I talked to Paul a little bit that there's probably a boilerplate portion of it, like the history of the Conservation Commission or whatever it is, and that we can get that done ahead of time. We might want to even do a mock grant like the one you're talking about, Kate, and just pretend like we're doing it so that we all can kind of see what the pieces are. And then when one comes up, we'll have the boilerplate portion prepared. And then we'll also have each of us a little more informed so that we'll be more effective at helping the people who do know how to write grants, helping them out. So that was my initial kind of thought about it.
Yeah, you should be aware that there's a large Arbor grant which is available for various purposes in town, so up to $10 million. And one of the things that it can provide for is outdoor recreation. That's one of the items that's been approved. Now, we have a subcommittee, I mentioned before, a strategic planning subcommittee. And one of the things that they are trying to identify is what things need to be addressed in town. And maybe you could present this to them and they could have it as an item. Because I think open space was one of the items that they had discussed.
David, who was the grant sponsor? Who's the person offering the grant?
The grant is an Arbor grant. It's a COVID-related grant.
Oh, okay.
Federal grant. And the two people on that committee are David Vogel and Sheila McCrevin.
And how much money do they have available?
Well, $10 million, but it's earmarked for a lot of things. But there is money that's not earmarked. And one of the things that was discussed last night at the meeting was input from town residents, and that would be, include town commissions on possible uses of that money. So.
Well, this sounds very appropriate that we start getting going then.
Yeah. I would think.
Um, I'm not sure how a subcommittee goes, but could we think about that? I mean, Kate, what would you think would be ideal if you were?
Well, I think I would start off with an email to Dave. I'm sorry.
No,
Is
go
that-
ahead.
Is that addressed to me? Or is that-
Well, it's next to Kate, but you both probably have
I don't
good.
want to step on Kate. No. Go
You're
ahead.
not stepping on me. If we should get in touch with select people about it, to get some details, we can certainly do that. Actually, you know what? I will put that on my list. So I will get in touch with him and select woman McCrevin to find out more details. And then in terms of our own work as a commission and perhaps as a grant writing subcommittee, I think it's a more valuable exercise if we use something that we might actually want at the end. But if there's anyone who's interested in being on that, I mean, I've worked on two. I'm by no means an expert. We just got very lucky with the big one recently. So.
And Diana has some experience too, right? I wonder if we could seek out if she is willing to be on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to ask her.
Kate, do you want to ask her or do you want
I can ask her.
okay. And is there anyone else who'd like to be on that? What do you think? 3 people, Kate? What is your thinking?
I think 3 is a good start. And then we'll just make sure that we have, that we report out to the whole group.
So is there any other person who feels called to be involved? Not at this moment, but I mean, I don't know that I could contribute much, but I'm willing to be an ancillary, help in an ancillary way.
It's okay. We can move on.
Okay. So should we move on to approval of minutes? I think we have meetings from 12/16 and January 20th. Does anyone have any other minutes than those?
I have a correction, just a typo correction for January 20th.
Okay.
My name, it's spelled Hagan.
Okay. It's an important one.
Can we do
Sorry
them
about
both
that,
together?
Barbara.
Pardon?
Sorry about that, Barbara.
Oh, well, I said it was a typo. Nobody had to confess.
Do we have to make individual motions for both?
Do we have any other corrections or should we, well, why don't we move to approve the December 16th, 2021 meeting minutes? Anyone want to second that? I move to approve them.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So approved. And the January 20th, 2022 meeting minutes, I move to approve those
I
With
second.
correction.
with the correction. Yeah, with the important correction. Okay, and Valerie seconded.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. Okay. Next on the agenda is your report, David Lobar.
Okay. Some of this I've already covered. So the town approved a $600,000 connectivity grant for sidewalks in the town center and the bike route, and that's the one that Kate was involved in. So that was successful. And the subcommittee on strategic planning is working to identify long-term needs for Woodbridge, especially financial health. It'll be based on other towns' strategic plans, as well as hopefully on expert reports, such as the CERC study. The stated goals are to grow the grand list, support and grow business, continue financial transparency, determine the future use of the Woodbridge Country Club, upgrade the senior center and the police department, improve the town center, including renovation of the old fire. This is a wish list. Improve energy efficiency, support inclusivity, and refine community events. The $10 million ARPA fund, which is American Rescue Plan Act, the plan for that money is to invest some of it in the business district, beautify the town center, improve ventilation in town buildings, information technology and cybersecurity, emergency and nonprofit relief, and also seeking input from town residents, which is why I mentioned that to you. And then there'll be a town meeting to discuss all that at some point.
David,
yeah.
can I just ask you a question, David?
Sure.
That money, that is already earmarked for the town of Woodbridge. That's all. We just need to figure out how it's best spent by the town, or is
Yes, it's earmarked. That the $10,000 is the maximum that's available, but it is available if you can come up with with ideas that fit the parameters of the grant.
I see. Got it.
So
So
David,
that's,
sorry.
no, sorry, never mind.
David, I was going to ask,
Yeah.
who's on the strategic planning committee? Who makes up that group?
Well, the subcommittee is David Vogel and Sheila McCrevin, but the person who actually came up with the idea of the strategic plan really was Tony and also Betsy Yagler. And the reason for that is if you have a strategic plan in place, then you can use that as a template for for directing some of this money. Mm-hmm. So that was the reason they started it.
I see.
Okay. Let's see. Beth would like to proceed with the referendum on Arbor Haven, and they have started negotiations with Arbor Haven, but there's no time frame. That was voted in a 4-2 vote. Housing what?
David, when they say they want to do a referendum, can they just say, do they have to give people a certain amount of time before they have it, or can they say we want it tomorrow? No,
they can't have it tomorrow. They first of all, they have to have a town meeting to approve a referendum. And then you have to have the referendum within, I don't know, 15 or 30 days. I don't know what exactly, but you can't have it right away. So,
okay.
And town meeting's got to be noticed, and I think it's a month. So, and then of course you have to have it in person because you can't have referenda by mail. So a lot of this depends on how much the town opens up.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. There's a couple other things. The Housing Opportunities Committee has distributed a survey on the town website, and they have not. They were supposed to report it today at their meeting, but they haven't completed it. So that'll be probably at the next meeting, which is February 28th. And a letter was read concerning the need for a tree ordinance in town. I think that was Barbara's letter. Is that right?
I didn't write a letter, but.
Okay, somebody wrote a letter about the tree ordinance. Or maybe someone just mentioned a tree ordinance, but it got to Beth somehow. So that came up. So they're expecting that to be, coming out of your commission. Let me see, is there anything else? Oh, and the other thing was one of the town residents in public comments suggested that a charter revision committee form to look at the charter, since the charter is very old and it doesn't really reflect the way people live today. And the first selectman agreed to add your memorandum regarding the Arbor Haven proposal as an addendum to the minutes, as it was not presented at the Board of Selectmen meeting this month or last month or any month. And that's my report.
What's the significance of adding it to the
The,
to the
the
minutes?
significance is it goes in the public record. When I presented it at that special meeting, no minutes were taken, no minutes were written. As far as I know, there's still no minutes for that. And the explanation was that it wasn't a meeting because there wasn't a quorum, but it was a meeting. But anyway, so then when you submitted that letter, your memorandum to the board, along with those supporting letters, it was put in the package, but it was never mentioned. It was never brought up at the meeting. And when the minutes came out, I said, you need to really include those in the minutes because the minutes is a history of the meeting. So it is now included. So it will be recorded.
Thank you.
Yep. You
Yes.
will.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you, David.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can I just ask an ignorant question, which we're probably getting to, but for the tree ordinance, is there a certain format for ordinances?
Yeah, there is. I mean, like I suggested last time, what I would do would take the idea of the tree ordinance, kind of decide what you're looking for, and then take it to the Board of Selectmen meeting or send it to Beth and have Jerry Weiner flesh it out, he'll put it in legal terms.
Isn't there an ordinance committee, David?
There is, but I think the way it works is you take it to the Board of Selectmen and then they will recommend it to the ordinance committee, and then the ordinance committee will review it with the people who are presenting it. In other words, the sponsors of that, and then they'll vote, and then they'll take it back to the Board of Selectmen and they'll vote, to make it an ordinance. So that's and there also has to be a public hearing. So it's a little bit involved. I mean, it's not terribly involved, but there are steps that you have to take. But I don't think you should worry about the legal language. You should just, worry about the meat of it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, the next thing on the agenda is the Merritt Avenue open space opportunity. And I think Tim wanted me to say that the wetlands, let me see if I get this right. The wetlands didn't have the public hearing and they're going to have it at their next meeting, I think. And I'm not sure the reason that they didn't. And I think what Chris Sullivan said, that the sooner we figure it out, the better for wetlands, but we really need to figure it out before it goes to TP&Z, and that we have a little time with that. And there's some benefit to waiting to see what wetlands wants to restrict, so that then we don't just restrict the same thing that wetlands does, but we add to it. And there's some benefit to giving wetlands a heads up so that they know what to expect. So with that, let's just have a discussion and figure out what we'd like to do.
So the reason it didn't go to a public hearing is that wetlands had wanted to get it evaluated by a hydraulic engineer.
Oh, right.
And that was not done. So they tabled it to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What was the hydraulic engineer going to look at, David?
Well, here's the issue. The map that they're working on is an old map. So the Pond Lily Dam has been taken out subsequent to that map being drawn. And the area has to be reevaluated for flooding. So the floodplain will change and the upland review area will change. Or perhaps will change, it may not, but that's the idea. So they need to work with current information.
How long does that take to have that done?
It doesn't take very long to have it done. As a matter of fact, they were talking about having it done. Let me see, the meeting was Wednesday, actually having it done today or tomorrow or maybe Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, very soon. Because they wanted to have it for the next meeting.
So I guess we have to figure out what our timing is going to be. I think your suggestion, Sharon, about waiting to see what wetlands is going to restrict, and then for us to review that and decide what we would suggest for the open space. I think that makes sense in terms of that order.
Sharon, why did you say it would be, you said it might be advantageous one way or the other. Why would it be advantageous for us to tell wetlands what we'd like to restrict?
I don't know that it's as advantageous. I'm not sure why that would be advantageous. More, I think that if we knew what they were already restricting, we could ask for a further buffer around that same area to
Yes.
further protect it. I think since they don't even know quite where wetlands is yet, us deciding how we're gonna, what we want. I mean, we don't have a very specific thing like, oh, this is the perfect thing to protect. I think we're trying to work in conjunction with wetlands. So I think it's more likely we'll have more of a sense of direction once they have more of a sense of direction
Yeah.
personally.
Okay.
I think also the point that we had talked about last time, or one of the other meetings, was we don't want to protect land that's already going to be protected by the wetlands.
Mhm.
So
And we're making a recommendation based on the current number of units. Can we modify that, or at some other time, if planning and zoning reduces the number of units, would we have to review this whole process of open space?
That's a good question. I don't know.
it just seems so extremely dense. It doesn't seem like it's feasible. At least the design that they've put forward.
Okay, so it sounds like where we all stand now is that we're want to save the 10% that is within our jurisdiction to recommend that it gets conserved, and we want to better understand where the wetlands are and what wetlands is going to do before we can really best decide what part of the land that is. And then if TP&Z makes a big change, that may affect what we do, but probably I don't know if we then can change what we're doing, what we ask for or not. We can always ask Chris Sullivan about that in the next intervening month.
Do we need to have a motion to table this until we get the information from wetlands?
Why not? I mean, there's no harm in having a motion.
I make a motion to table our discussion and decision around the Merritt Avenue open space opportunity until we've heard from wetlands on their hydrology report.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Barbara, you've got that down in the notes?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so shall we move on to preserving trees during development? Barbara.
Oh dear, and I'm taking notes. Okay, I have, I think just to keep people in the loop, I did quite a bit of research online about tree ordinances and in Connecticut. And I have found actually it's very difficult to see where places have it other than regarding public areas and what people can and cannot do with trees and tree wardens and so forth. And most things say that regulations within planning and zoning and or wetlands are pretty much the way to go, and probably easier than what David was describing. I did find something that was very, very helpful, and it was done by the OLR, or Office of Legislature Research. And it does talk a great deal about the state statute and what it gives towns the right to do. And it does give towns the right to regulate clear cutting very easily. And I thought that maybe we should all have this this paper, not very long. And interestingly enough, it refers more to like visual things on coastal areas and so forth, and also on preempting. Apparently, you cannot preempt logging or forestry things, except there are 20 towns who can. And they list them out, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, going with this, even places that it says, for instance, Wallingford has a special area within their ordinances and so forth. I couldn't find it looking at, because there's a whole list of all the towns, all 169 towns and all their ordinances and their regulations and everything. And you go into those ordinances, so it's kind of hidden in these towns. And I think it would be better for us to actually come up with what we would like to see in this, as David said, the meat of what we'd like to see in this, and then go back to some of these towns that apparently do have regulations and or ordinances, and see how they have dealt with them or how they've expressed them. And does that seem like a viable way to go about this?
Yes.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Barbara, thank you for doing all that research. It sounds like it was a lot.
Oh, it's interesting. It's very interesting, because this group that does this research really gets in, and they know what they're doing, so they find out what all the towns have, and so they give examples of how you can keep developers from clear cutting, and sometimes the towns have groves of trees that they insist that the developers keep, so it's a certain part, and obviously they have regulations that don't allow anybody to keep historic or cut historic trees or things like that, and both wetlands and planning and zoning get involved in it, as would be natural. So if everybody wants, I will simply, well, I can send this to you via email, or I can copy it and actually hand it to you, if whichever people want. I happen to like paper myself. Still, I get all tied up.
Barbara, just a point of information. If you're looking for a specific ordinance in a specific town, contact the town clerk, because they're required to file all those ordinances, so they would know how to get them for you. You don't have to try to dig. It's very opaque trying to find one of those things. I agree. I've tried to do it, and it's very frustrating.
Well, you can find the ordinances, but finding the actual rules within the ordinance it gets very convoluted,
It
as far
does.
as I can see.
Well, maybe what I would love to do is see a bunch of those different ordinances in different towns, just to get an idea of what people are, how
Well,
much.
like I said, a great deal of it, because you have the state statutes, a great deal of it, people apparently have done regulations as opposed to ordinances. So they have regulations within the planning and zoning.
I wonder if we could just get a copy of, say, I know you mentioned before, Barbara, that Westport had an ordinance or regulation on it. Just be curious to see what they said on theirs.
And as I say, I mean, even Orange has an ordinance, but it mostly relates to the tree wardens and the do's and don'ts of public property, including streets and sidewalks and so forth. From what I see through these ordinances. Now, again, it may be hidden, some of these other things, and I'm totally relying on this one report, which I found very, very revealing.
So, Barbara, it sounds like if you send us an email, we could print it out, and that might be easier and less work for you. And if you had any examples, you could add that to it, and we could read those too. Is that a possibility?
That is fine, yeah.
And it sounds, the other thing I'm just wondering is the meat of this that inspired you is clear cutting of land, and the the detriment that provides to the environment. And as David's saying, is that sounds like a focal point if we were to write an ordinance or a regulation that we'd want to have at least scrutiny if someone was planning to clear cut. Now, I don't know if clear cutting for housing or clear cutting for farm or for a solar farm all goes under the same umbrella, but maybe that's how we can start educating ourselves. But to David's point, I think at least part of it, if I understand what you want, Barbara, is to prevent clear cutting of development land.
That's,
right?
that's where my thoughts have started. Yes. I mean, when you talk about clear cutting for farmland, I mean, that's sort of can't happen. You can't have the farmland if you don't have it clear cut, put it that way.
Right, so maybe we make a
But
distinct.
it's development. It's where the developers take whole sections of wooded land and they sell the wood for logging. I know what they do. They did it to me. But they actually take every tree off the land. Sometimes they turn around and plant more back, but that's what they do. And that's what I'm trying to, I think is a real detriment to this town. And some of the ordinance have visual vistas, so that especially near the coast. So if somebody's ruining the site, they've actually found all kinds of ways to protect trees, depending upon the town. They seem to all have different directions they go.
So if we were to do one, that clear cutting would be a main aspect of it. Is there anything else that other people are thinking would be important? I know there's some historic trees.
Yeah, you have the notable tree group that have the specific trees that are in the town that are of a certain size or an age or whatever and they're on a notable tree list, and they certainly should be protected. I don't know whether they are.
Barbara, have any of these towns that you've seen, do they specify a certain percentage of tree cut that's permitted on a property?
I haven't seen that specifically, but again, as I keep saying, it's very difficult I mean, I know Wallingford has a tree ordinance of some sort, but I couldn't figure out how to find it within their ordinance.
Yeah, so just as an example, we have a pretty big lot and more than half of it is wooded. So would an ordinance like this prevent us from, in a future point, if we decided we wanted to cut down all of our trees, would we not be allowed to cut down the trees on our own property?
To a point, yeah. And I suppose part of it depends upon what it's for.
Yeah, let's make sure, like, I like where you're headed, but let's make sure we're real clear on what that is, because yeah.
No, I know what you're saying. And yes, indeed, one would have to be very clear.
And we might be able to limit it to developers too. I mean, that's a very different thing, like Arbor Haven, for example, where they're dealing with huge equipment and lots of land versus a single family making a choice about their yard. That seems like two different things.
I think it would be interesting to see what the towns who have established regulations, how they regulate new lots versus existing lots, and see how they deal with it. Because I could think of instances where an existing lot would be something that, if somebody had cut down every single tree on their property and they had a 3-acre lot, similar to what happened on Northrop Road. I know that's a new lot, but it could be as unsightly even if it was an existing lot too. So I'd be just curious how other towns have that balance between being big brother versus trying to protect the aesthetics of the town too.
So it sounds like we've begun this discussion, but maybe we need to do a little more research to come up with what we think would be a good ordinance. Is that accurate?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I-
I think we need to continue
Yeah.
with research, yes.
I also think that the idea of benchmarking it's a good one.
What do you mean by benchmarking, Valerie?
Well, by benchmarking, you're looking at the other towns and
Oh,
seeing what they've
benchmarking.
already,
Yes, got
what
it.
they've already done, and yeah.
So the next step might be, Barbara, you sending around that email,
Mhm.
and so how would we go about finding out how other towns benchmark? Like calling the town of Westport and Wallingford and seeing what for their town clerks, and having them send us a copy of their ordinances in orange. Would that be helpful?
What I probably would do would be to take some of the towns that are mentioned specifically in this report that I'll be emailing and see about some of those, like Washington,
Mhm.
Connecticut, or some of the smaller towns that are inland, they're
Mhm.
more like ours. And looking into their, and I think Dave's right. You possibly call up the town clerks and tell them what you're looking for, and have them send you the pertinent information, because they certainly would know whether they were, or even planning and zoning. I mean, or the building department. Chris
Yeah,
Sullivan is what I'm
Yeah,
trying
probably,
to.
yeah, probably the building department would be a good place to start.
Uh,
We could look at the ordinances and then look at some of the consequences of those ordinances.
That's a good
Um,
idea.
Were
Yeah,
they positive? Were
good
they
idea.
negative? And just refine them.
I think Kate's thought of, trying to look at some of the other ordinances so that we don't suggest something that's intrusive to homeowners versus something that still accomplishes what we want. And I'm sure other communities have probably had to face that same
I'm sure,
balance.
yeah.
Well, I'll volunteer to talk to Chris Sullivan and see what she knows about this, because she may have, be able to locate a bunch of comparable
Mm-hmm.
ones as well. But Barbara, if you send that email around.
Yep.
And it sounds like maybe next month we could each choose a town, or one of us could do a lot of research, or somehow further it by getting more data before we make any personal recommendations or commission recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else on that topic that anyone wants to say? Okay, so let's move on to Trail Challenge update. Next steps.
I had asked him to not include that in the agenda for this month. So,
Well, let's take it off.
yeah.
Can we agree? Can we vote to take it off the agenda? So move. You moved, I second, and we all agree? Okay. What's this next one? Oh, shalls and mays. I got to admit, I didn't read the shalls and mays because I didn't see that attachment till late in the game. Does anyone have anything they want to say about that?
Don't know why it was there.
I think Tim is trying to give us a sense of what our authority is and isn't as commission members. But since I think it's his thing, maybe we should let him present it at another time.
Yes, I agree.
I agree also.
Okay, so Barbara, you'll mention to table that too to another meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can all look at it in the next month and,
I think he's had that on several agendas. I think it's kind of an ongoing thing that he wanted to talk about, so maybe just at the next meeting, he could further that.
okay. So since Tim is going to be writing the next agenda, do we have input that we'd like to make sure he includes? We want from what I understand, we want the proposal from the Woodbridge Land Trust and Woodbridge Parks Association. Kate, would you like a trails that put on the next agenda, the trails, or do you want to wait a few more months?
No, I'll have a better sense of that in the next couple of weeks. I haven't had a chance to work on it, so that's why I'd asked him to table it.
Oh,
In terms of the Parks Association presentation, I'd like to have some time in addition to them just presenting their presentation that would give us an opportunity to ask questions and have a discussion.
so presentation and discussion. Okay, Barbara, you're writing that?
Yeah.
The trail.
Just another comment about the next meeting. If it winds up that it's a longer meeting, that's fine. I think it's unfortunate we weren't able to do it this meeting, but if the next meeting is a bit longer, that's fine. I think it's an important topic to have.
Okay, so is everyone okay with that? Is that agreed upon? Okay, so you can write that too, Barb. And we'll have to, by then I think the Merritt Avenue wetlands will have been determined, so we'll have that as an agenda item. And hopefully people will have a little more insight into the tree part, and that could be just an update, or maybe it can be meatier depending on how far we've gotten.
We'll say update.
Okay, update, and we'll continue the shells and maze.
So just on that, Barbara, I'll reach out to you after the meeting, and you can maybe give me a couple names of towns you want to know what their regulations are, and I can follow up with those communities, and so we can split up the list a bit for you.
Okay.
Paul, that's very nice. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I guess the last agenda item is members' comments. Does anyone want to add anything to what we said tonight?
The agenda for next month, what was it we were talking about? Sorry. We did Merritt Avenue tree ordinance. We put it off to next month. What was it?
The challenge.
No,
The trail challenge.
no.
So,
Sorry about that.
Greenway,
The Greenway.
speaking to
The
Stephanie.
Greenway.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be something we can pick up. I mean, I think that might be a topic we have on our agenda for the next several months so we can progress.
Right, but we need to put that on the agenda, so I'll add that.
Mhm.
Topics.
And also the $10 million as well was a
all right. That's a
Right.
good one.
Okay. I'm just making a list of everything we want on the agenda.
Mr. Loberg, are you able to email me the email addresses for Selectman Vogel and Selectwoman McCreven? Thank you. And then my only comment from this was that I very much enjoyed our site visit. That was fun. So we should try and find other things to go site visit.
Especially when it's warmer.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
and
Yeah,
less
that was
ice.
my only criticism too.
Well, it was a little chaotic. It was a little disorganized, but I was nice to see each other in person, I thought.
Mm.
Well, it's also nice to see all the people from around the area so interested in talking with us about it too. I was
And I
glad
hope
to
they
see
wind
that.
up. I hope they wind up going to the planning and zoning and wetlands meetings too, or voice their concerns there.
And Kate, to that point, maybe planning a site visit for a possible, like as well as a mock grant, we can all go to the site and also kind of assess it too, because I think we'll be much more invested in any kind of grant if we also see the land and see its value. So, it just could be a half-hour visit, but that's something, Barbara, we can suggest, since Tim will not have heard that we're interested in doing that, if indeed we are.
So I think also, when we start to identify areas that would be potential greenway additions, would be something we'd want to see in person too.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant.
Before all of you wonderful new people joined us, we spent several months working on tools to be able to evaluate properties objectively. So we can
Oh,
bust those out for the group.
Yeah, those would be fun, and Tim was very involved in them. So are people comfortable adjourning this meeting?
I
Sure.
so move.
Any second?
I
Okay.
second it.
We have 2 seconds. We're really ready to go. Okay. And so what time is it? It is
8:42.
8:42.
Thank you very much.
Conclusion of the
Thank you.
Conservation Commission meeting for February 2022. Thank you, everybody.